My name's Roger Jones. My business is called the C-Suite Catalysts. And what we do is very, very simple. We enable B2B firms to be more effective, to be able to influence and have greater commercial impact in the C-suites of their marketplace. I remember way back when I had a corporate job and I was responsible for global business for an IT services firm. And I felt really honoured at one point because I was invited to give the speech at the industry conference in Cancun in Mexico. And it was a great privilege and a great opportunity to sell to all our North American customers. And I prepared diligently. I had a 20-minute speaking slot and I thought for 20 minutes I'll make about 90 PowerPoint slides. I thought that'd be sufficient. Time flew by and in no time at all I was walking out on stage. And I remember in my 20 minutes looking out at the audience, they looked moderately interested. And in my 20 minutes, I got to about slide 66. So I thought I did a fairly good job. And when I walked off stage, my heart began to sink because I just got a very warm ripple of applause. So I just walked off and I thought, maybe I did okay, maybe it wasn't that bad. And then the next speaker walked on stage. He was the chief executive of our main North American competitor. And what did he do? I thought there's something up with the audio visual. He's got no slides. What's happening here? You could have slides in a corporate presentation. He stood at the front of the audience and for the next 20 minutes, the audience was spellbound. He just told a whole series of stories. Stories about innovation and how his company was more innovative than the others. Stories about change. It wasn't about people change, it was about his gardening and how his garden changed, but that really got the message sunk in well. And he talked about leadership, but not about leadership of the great politicians or whoever his role models were. He talked about a big change that happened to him and how it made his whole perspective on leadership change when he was a wayward teenager. And rather than be arrested by his policeman, the policeman gave him a fatherly talk, and that taught him so many insights about how to lead people. And it was at that point when he walked off stage and got a standing ovation, my heart was still down low, but I realized the power of storytelling. So I decided to research the topic, learn more about it, and that's when I became a storytelling advocate. Because if you think about it, leadership is about storytelling. It's about engaging, it's about persuading, it's about inspiring. And if you want to know the facts about storytelling, a story is going to be, or a fact is going to be 20 times more memorable if it's wrapped in the narrative. You're going to be 2 times more persuasive if you use a story rather than facts and figures. And if you think about day-to-day conversations, when you talk to your friends or your colleagues, they're wrapped in mini narratives. So it's a very natural form of communication. And if you go way back to when we were children, that's how we learned. We learned about, well, my daughter, she's now 9. I think back to when she was 2 or 3, first going to the dentist. I remember when I first went to the dentist, I was terrified. She was looking forward to it because her book Topsy and Tim had told her the story of going to a dentist. So it's how we learn as humans. The unfortunate thing is when we put on our suits and we walk into the corporate world, we become what I call logic junkies. And often we forget the power of a great story. The key ingredients to a good story, I would say, is one is structure. Keep it simple. Okay? So you have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end. So in the beginning, introduce the characters. A few sort of, I don't know, how they look, how tall they are. Start the journey of the story. Where are you going from A to B? A good story has a turning point. Something happened, like the big grizzly bear jumped out. So what did you do then? How did you escape from the grizzly bear? Close off the story, and typically there's a learning point at the end. Share your learning point with your audience. And then think of a good story. It has some emotion in there. So there's a bit of an emotional roller coaster within the story. Include that. Don't put in too much detail in the story and keep it nice and tight time-wise. 2 to 3 minutes will be perfect. A story is going to enable you to do so many things. You think of the types of stories we can use in business. Maybe you want to tell clients and your marketplace how innovative your company is. So you could tell the story of a new discovery you've made. You may want to tell your customers, rather than present a case study, present a case story, bring them to life as well. Perhaps you're a leader and you need to take your company on a journey from where you are at the moment to the future. So it's an inspiring future journey. So I would say it's not what can you do with the stories, it's what can't you do. So think of a spreadsheet. Maybe you've got to bring a spreadsheet to life to your management committee, but maybe there are a few key numbers within that spreadsheet you can bring to life. You can make a story of those numbers. So I'd say, what can't you do with a story? But if you're new to storytelling, just start small. Just introduce stories into a nice, safe audience to start off with, and then start to see the power of stories as you start to engage your audiences much more. Well, if you're new to storytelling, what I'd recommend you do is start to be what I call a bit of a story detective. Start to watch and start to observe how stories are being told at the moment. In your favourite newspaper, read how journalists use stories to actually make their messages, their articles more engaging. Watch adverts, see how they bring that particular product that could be pretty dull to life. So be a story detective. And then backtrack and start to think some of your own personal leadership stories. You've probably got some values that are close to your heart. What's the narrative behind them? Share what your thinking is and how your thinking evolved. So you start a bit of self-disclosure is very important as well. But fundamentally, start to be a story detective and then start to craft a few personal stories and use them to start off with on safe audiences in your company.